Judge.
I suppose stated differently, I am asking if, in the year 2010, the state of Ohio or any state with guts and fidelity to the Constitution can nullify federal laws that invade our natural rights.
Judge.
Amen. Amen.
Judge, we can do just that right here in Ohio, but instead of answering your highly hypothetical question that the legislature passes this and it gets signed, I'm going to answer a real question for you, which is it's far more likely that the people will do this themselves through the initiative and referendum process. If Tim's bill fails, we're going to draft language as a constitutional amendment requiring that you all shall not be compelled to participate in any health care system. And we're going to put that in the state constitution, and then we have a legitimate 10th Amendment conflict, because you know what? Under the case, Prince, that Sheriff Mack participated in, all the judges held that it's not necessary or proper to commandeer state sovereignty and state constitutions to uphold a Commerce Clause exercise. So
Representative Hood, when you argue for state sovereignty in your campaign for the Congress, I suppose you're not always in front of an audience as wonderfully receptive as this one. But do people understand, whether they are Republicans or Democrats, that the loss of state sovereignty is not just some academic thing that we talk about in law schools, but it really is the loss of freedom, because it unleashes the feds to do whatever they want by removing what little check and balance there is on them? Does this argument resonate for a young person like you running for the Congress?
You know what? 10 years ago, I would have answered that question absolutely not. But today I have been out there running for Congress, talking with folks across the district, and no, that argument is now starting to resonate. People are starting to be educated and realize what the 10th Amendment is, and and if not totally understand the 10th Amendment, at the very least they understand that there's a concept of state sovereignty against federal tyranny. And one of the problems I had as a state legislator in Ohio for 8 years is our state legislators, they weren't interested in state sovereignty. They were interested in doing what the federal government told them to do. We passed the federal misnamed Patriot Act on the federal level, and then they passed the Ohio misname against my objection on the state level. And the problem we have in our state legislatures across the country is the state legislators, they're not interested in the 10th Amendment. They're interested in taking money from the federal government, and they're interested in that bribe money, and that is what's got to stop. That's what we have to change.
Sheriff, what can freedom-loving county executives, county sheriffs, even state governors do when on their own, in order to preserve the sovereignty of the states, when confronted with a legislature so pig-headed and obstinate they won't even recognize the Constitution as the supreme law of the land because they're afraid of the 10th Amendment?
Yeah, well, no. Secession comes up, but that's not the answer. That's not the answer. The answer is we don't leave. We make sure they get kicked out of our counties. Tell them to leave. Now, the bottom line,
as a practical matter, what have you done or would you do with an overbearing federal government in Arizona?
That's where you bring in not just the 10th Amendment, but the theory of interposition. And the sheriff is the last line of defense against all tyranny. His job is to protect his citizens from all the wolves. It really doesn't matter where the wolf comes from, the streets or Washington, D.C. In fact, the street wolves are much more fair in their application.
Maurice, I always thought that when the states joined the Union, they simply enacted a piece of legislation agreeing to join. If it's just a simple piece of legislation, why can't they simply unenact it?
Yeah.
Judge, your question is a good one. I think that the proper response is precisely what Sheriff Mack referred to, and that is to hold the federal government's feet to the fire instead
If the
to
federal
nullify
government thinks
government
that
acts.
states are serious about seceding, put aside what the Supreme Court might do with that, wouldn't that put the fear of God into the federal government that they better start reading the Constitution and following it? Otherwise, those people in Ohio might be another country, and when they couldn't get income taxes from them?
Boy, that'd be a novel phenomenon.
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting, Judge? If you look at the Northwest Ordinance, which was the compact that originally created Ohio, and then Ohio's contract with the federal government, it's very clear that the purpose of both contracts was to protect property rights and to protect individual liberties. Both of those documents, along with the Constitution, have always been clear that those documents create islands of government power in a sea of individual rights and individual liberties, rather than islands of liberty in a sea of government power.
Senator Grandel, is the case hopeless?
Well, I don't think
I mean,
the case is
you
hopeless.
live with these legislators. One would think that they would want the feds off their backs, or do they just want that cash, no matter what the strings are that's attached to the cash?
Well, I don't think it's hopeless because I agree with Ron Hood. I mean, 10 years ago when I first got on the floor and voted against a federal extortionist bill and gave the 10th Amendment speech that we shouldn't have to vote for something because the federal government was extorting us, people told me to sit down.
Well, look,
10
if
years
I went
later-
to the state of Ohio and I said, I want you to lower the speed limit, and if you do, I'll give you $100 million, I would expect that some district attorney would arrest me for attempted bribery. So why does the Congress get away with this?
Well, that was the speech I gave, Judge. I mean, that was the speech I gave. But you know what? Here's the hope right here. I mean, look at these wonderful young people who understand the 10th Amendment and state sovereignty. I mean, it is the people pushing the legislators on this issue which will turn this vote. We went from not being able to talk about state sovereignty in the 10th Amendment to at least passing it out of the Ohio Senate. And with their help, we're going to get it out of the Ohio House in the next year.
Sheriff, if the federal government was taken over by tyrants who ordered local...
It already has. It has, Judge.
who ordered local police to strip the people of their weaponry and their natural rights, what would the local police do?
They would have to, first of all, I really think that that's the ultimate question facing our law enforcement officers today. There's about 700,000 across this country. I believe it would be about a 50-50 split. Some would just follow orders, follow the Nuremberg defense, which was not right, and the others would stand with the people. And I really look for that to happen. I think a lot of sheriffs and police are becoming true oath keepers today.
When you ask other police officers around the country to take the oath of fidelity, to the Constitution, which means to refuse to obey an unjust law. Thomas Aquinas said you have a duty to obey an unjust law. Who could resist that? Who could reject it? Who could refuse to take that oath, Sheriff?
Well, hopefully they know and understand the Nuremberg trials and others. We have no obligation as cops or sheriffs or police in this country to follow unconstitutional orders. In fact, quite the opposite. We swore that we would stand against such and that we will stand on the side of the people and stand for freedom.
Sheriff,
that's what it's about.
Sheriff Max, Senator Grandel, Representative Hood, Maurice Thompson, thank you for joining us on Freedom Watch.
Thank you.